Hello and welcome to this special series of episodes called 29 Days of Magic. During Black History Month, the month of February, I'll be interviewing a Black woman a day who's from business and entrepreneurship. You name it, I'm going to have a chat with her. The idea for this is to show off the amazingness of Black women throughout various industries. I hope you take a listen, like, share, review, and be inspired by these incredible stories. Take a listen. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Munoz, CEO of the Cultural Communications Agency, D-Flash. Each episode, I bring a different business leader, entrepreneur, awesome, amazing person who's doing great work. And this episode is no different. I am so excited to have Candace Parker, who's a mom, WNBA player, and broadcaster. We're going to talk all things sports, business, technology. It's going to be a fantastic conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Candace.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. So you know how this works. The first question is always the same. I'm going to be fascinated by your answer. So Candace, what was your first job?
Wow. So I absolutely love kids. It's always been, I'm the youngest. And so I never got the opportunity to be like the big sibling. So I was always super jealous of my brothers for having, little siblings. So I was always babysitting. That was my first real, job. I was like the on-call babysitter for our entire neighborhood. Honestly, even in college, I was babysitting for, different, teachers' children or coaches' children. I was the kid that would rather babysit kids than go to a party or a dance or anything like that. So that was actually my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite job. I love kids. I don't know. It's just something, they're hilarious. So I really enjoyed doing that.
Wow. Well, taking care of kids and making sure that they're going to be okay sort of prepared you for life. So that was helpful. So we go from being an awesome babysitter to multi-hyphenate awesome women today. Like, what was that career journey like?
The career, I feel as though, I always played basketball. Growing up, I played basketball, I played soccer. And I always was involved in some way in a team situation, in a team environment. And, I think that transition from babysitting and kids and things like that kind of transitioned into family and team. And I think in a lot of situations, we're understanding now how important it is to learn how to work in a team, whether it's a family environment, in employment, whatever. And right now I play, professional basketball, but also I'm a part of TNT and Turner Sports and NBA TV broadcasting. And that's a team where you have to work with producers and, fellow analysts and show hosts and things like that. And so I think it just kind of prepared me for communication. I think the big part of it was just learning how to communicate from an early age and obviously trying to get better at it as time went on.
Awesome. And so obviously, playing in WNBA, that's a whole other road because, people want to play sports and then actually people who make it to the professional league. Like, what was, you think, kind of the biggest change for you from going from college to professional?
In college, you are the coaches and the school's responsibility. So they care about your successes. They care about your failures. They care whether you're getting a C or a B in your class because it directly impacts them.
Right.
Professionally, I feel as though it's more so you're individually trying to succeed. It's a profession. It's a job. So whether you eat pregame, it doesn't impact them. It impacts your career. It impacts, your performance. And so I think it was a huge adjustment just in learning. Nobody's making you do anything as a professional,
you have to be responsible for yourself. Oh, damn.
You have to be responsible for yourself. And in college, you're kind of catered to, and they're making sure you're in class, you're sitting in the first 3 rows. And so those type of behaviors and morals and values are kind of instilled in you from, childhood into college. And then in the pros, you can kind of figure out which ones work for you, and I think that's the biggest transition when you're going from college to professional.
So you've gotten to, all right, now you're solely responsible for yourself and you're playing on a team. What's been one of the things that I never thought I'd find my way through this because this challenge is insane. And then you did.
personally, my biggest, I would say, achievement and my biggest challenge has been I became a mom at 23 years old. I finished my rookie season, and then I was pregnant with my daughter during my rookie season, and then I had her right before my second year. So professionally, I was trying to learn how to adjust, take care of myself while also taking care of my daughter. And I think the biggest challenge has been growing in my sport and growing in my career while also growing, as a mom. And I never wanted to sacrifice my family for my career or vice versa. And I think you can do both. And so that was my whole entire mission at 23, when everyone told me I wasn't going to be able to do it, was to balance both and be there for my daughter, but also, have a successful career.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because I think, there's so much pressure on what you're quote unquote, supposed to do versus what you can do. What were some of the things where you're like, no, I'm going to make this work?
I was adamant about nursing. I feel as though I wanted to give my daughter what I thought was best for her, just because of our schedule. We travel so much. I read up on nursing, and that's what I wanted to do, and every mom is different in their desires and wants and needs and abilities. And I decided that I wanted to nurse her, and everyone was like, it's not going to work. It's not possible. And I think that was one thing I dug my heels on. And it's hilarious, the stories that have come of it. We'll sit at halftime, and my daughter's father would bring me her, and I would nurse at halftime.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Really?
Yeah, going over plays and nursing. And then I'd have to switch, because, you got to switch boobs, and I would go to the other one while still seamlessly talking about a play. And I nursed her solely. She never had formula for 13 months. And while it's fine to give your daughter formula, that is perfectly fine. You can give your kid that. I was a formula baby. I turned out fine. I just loved that bond that I had with her. And I didn't want to, as a first-time mom, not do something I wanted to do as a result of my career. And so we made it work. And honestly, it's so funny because she nursed so long. I mean, she's already really tall. So she looked like she was almost 3 years old when we started nursing. But that's something that I feel as though, like, I'm so happy that I didn't, I tried it. And if it wouldn't have worked, we would have figured something else out, but it did work. And it worked for both of us.
And I think that's the thing that we have to remember, is that, like, one, we as women can figure it out, but it's also having an organization or a company that is like, okay, this is what you want to do. We're actually going to adapt, versus making your life, difficult, which oftentimes is the case for many women in business.
Yes, it's unfortunately, I feel as though the burden always falls
on the mom,
on women. And to be honest with you, I've noticed that just within my career, even in the way that we speak about kids, there's a number of questions that I would get, even on the road today as an 11-year-old. My daughter's 11. Where is your daughter? Who's taking care of them?
Uh-huh.
One of the questions I asked back to the reporter was, do you ask Steph Curry this question? Do you ask LeBron James this question? Who's taking care of their kids at this moment? So I think the perception and what has always been in the workplace is changing slowly, but at the same time, there's still a lot of things that need to be done.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a huge issue right now, because we're obviously in this really crazy time of COVID. It's affecting more working moms than it is affecting working dads. Like, how's that been for you? Because obviously, you get to go into a bubble.
Yes, the bubble actually was unbelievable for us. I think I was able to have my family there with me. And I think that impacted my experience there, in that we had been in quarantine basically for 3 months leading up to the bubble. The bubble was freedom. We were able to, like, if you think about it, we were in a bubble with people that were tested every day. So we were able to have people over to our apartment. We cooked, we had Taco Tuesday nights, we had TikTok nights. My daughter could get on her bike. It was on a campus. So I didn't worry, when she was riding her bike with one of her little friends in the bubble. So we actually had a great experience. They were able to go to the games, and I wasn't traveling, so I was home every night. So honestly, I can't lie. The experience actually wasn't as bad as, other than my dogs not being able to be there. The experience, wasn't as bad as some others.
And, looking back on, obviously last year was, not just COVID, but we had, the protests that happened over the summer where basically it forced every industry to be like, oh, actually, there is this thing called racism. We weren't kidding about this. And obviously the WNBA, you all are just so phenomenal in the way that you stand up and you actually make change. Like, what was probably the biggest lesson that you got out of last year?
That I have so much hope. And I say this not disregarding all of the things that we've yet to accomplish, but in saying that in less than a generation's time, if you think about when you look back at Jim Brown and you look back at, Bill Russell, you look back at a Muhammad Ali, these were individual athletes having a summit and coming together and demanding change and bringing attention to the need to address racism. Now we have entire leagues. This summer really spoke to me in the fact that there's a lot of individuals that know things are wrong, but just because things have always been done that way, they continue to do them. And with that being said, that goes along the lines of just changing that, like knowing that something is wrong and not doing it or demanding change is important. And I use the flag as an example. In 2017, we didn't come out of the locker room, the WNBA finals, we got booed. There are people that chose to kneel. There's people that chose to stand. And if you knelt, you were in the wrong. Now, fast forward 3 years to 2020, and people were calling out people that did not kneel for the flag. So in a 3-year span, this perception of what this act meant changed dramatically. And an entire generation, now not just 1 or 2 or 3 athletes are coming together, entire leagues are coming together. So I think what 2020 told me was, just because things have always been done a certain way, it doesn't mean that they're right. And we have to continue to move forward and not just be hung up on that for years. And so I really am filled with a lot of hope for this next generation, that they'll make even bigger steps, and we're going to continue to do what we can do in the process, even in the WNBA.
That's so true, because I think people seem to forget, I saw a quote that was really interesting. It was about the fact that, like, we don't see enough of the Martin Luther King photographs in color, because by showing them in black and white, it makes people think it was like 100 years ago, when it was the 60s. And so, there was color back then. And so it's not that long ago that we went from, like, we didn't have equal rights until 1965. We're now in 2021. We are talking about less than 60 years. And when you quantify that and realize how much has had to be adapted and changed, and generations of people who will never change, we've come a long way. And even again, in the last 5 years, it's been such a drastic change. And last summer again forced everyone to pay attention, largely because people were finally at home, and so you couldn't look away. You couldn't say, "Well, I don't know about this," or "I had no idea," or maybe he did something wrong, maybe she did something wrong. That's why the police shot at her. Like, no, there's video. And you can no longer turn your head and pretend like you're not listening to and be part of the problem. You have to be part of the solution. And so I would agree that it's so important to have hope, and then act on that hope.
It's so important to have hope and act on that hope, but it's also, there's a reality in all of this as well. And I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where I was exposed to so many different things. And my father And my mother, it wasn't teaching just from school. It was at home. It was learning about your history, where you came from, being proud of it, but also the lies that society tells us and the lies that they want us to believe to continue the system that's already in place. And whether, the black squares were true, in which people really did self-reflecting, I think it's these months that are going to determine whether all the things that we said back in June, in May, in July, all those things are going to be sustainable, and all of those things are actually going to come to life. And I think it's these months where, I use this example, like in training camp, everybody shows up on the first day early, right? First day of the job, you show up early, get your work in, do what you're supposed to. But how is day number 1 any more important than day 20 when you're working towards a season or in a career? And I think that's where we as a society have to understand, like, today is important. All those feelings, they're still there. And we still have to continue to do something about it.
We absolutely do. And it's like, and one step in front of the other. And also holding people accountable. It's like, for all those folks who put the black squares up, okay, we're 6 months down the road. What have we done? Was that performative allyship, or are you actually taking some steps to make some meaningful and real action? And it goes beyond Black History Month. Like, what are you doing every day, every month to actually start making some meaningful and lasting change?
Individuals. And I think it's not that you have to have all the money in the world, and it's not like you have to have the biggest platform. I've seen the people that I've had the most respect for. I worked with an organization, the Social Change Fund, that I'm a part of, with Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony and Dwayne Wade. And it's been interesting to meet the individuals that go door to door for people to register to vote. Like, they're having a tremendous impact in America. And I think we think of people as just having millions of followers or millions of dollars or whatever, that they're the only ones that can really make an impact. And it's not. I think everybody can kind of step in and make a difference in some way. And it might not affect thousands and thousands of people, but it will help in what is trying to be accomplished here.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I mean, there are so many wonderful organizations who, were driving people to the polls, driving the elderly Black people out to the polls in Georgia. Like, everyone sort of kind of, has a thing that they can do, and it doesn't have to be affecting millions. You can affect hundreds. It's like, we're seeing this now, with, vaccines and getting testing and like all the inequities. And then there are all these wonderful nonprofits that have come up and say, listen, we're going to help. And so, I think it's the choice to try and do something good, and that your impact goes farther than you ever know, even if you think you're just helping 1 or 2 people. So it's great to see how we can find ways to expand. So now you've kind of done a foray into broadcasting. What's that? How is that different when you're on the other side of it, instead of like being on the court, now broadcasting and talking about what you're seeing on the court?
It's different, but I always say that broadcasting is the second best job in the world that I want. I absolutely love playing basketball. And I think there's a lot of people that do that in their free time. And when your job can be something that people do for fun, I think you're lucky. And the same thing, everybody talks about basketball at some point on their couch. And that's all I've done growing up. I am a basketball fiend. I love basketball. And with that being said, I would do it anyway. So when the opportunity came where they were going to pay me to talk about basketball, I was like, I feel like, where do I sign? Like, yes, I'm getting over on you. Like, I do this anyway. And so honestly, it was a dream job. It still is. I still have to pinch myself and realize that I'm up there with my idols that I grew up watching play, that I talked about on my couch, sitting with my brothers and my dad and my mom. Like, I have to pinch myself that I'm on shows with these guys. So it really, I think, was an adjustment, but something that I really enjoyed because I've always done it. So it's authentic. And I think anytime you're able to be authentic in what you love and who you are and all that stuff within your job, then it's, you know, it brings out the best.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, because now I'm going to get nerdy and because I love basketball just as much. What was your team growing up and what was your favorite play?
I was the absolute biggest Bulls fan.
Same. It's same.
Yes. And when I tell you, I love the Bulls. I mean, I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I grew up in Naperville, and everything was the Bulls. Like the expectation, to think about it, they won championships during the 90s. And that was when, like, ever since I was 5, it was just like the Bulls won a championship.
The Bulls won again. Yeah.
Grant Park, great. Like it was just expected, you know? And so I grew up a Bulls fan. Obviously, everybody was a Michael Jordan fan. I loved Ron Harper. So I was a big Ron Harper fan. Really like BJ Armstrong. Those
same. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, my parents both went to Iowa, so we had the BJ Armstrong connection. But yeah, so those were my favorite. I still am a Bulls fan. I'm excited to be headed back home to play in the WNBA this year because there's nothing like Chicago in the summer. And Chicagoland, just in terms of sports, they just embrace basketball.
Yeah, I even though I grew up, obviously I'm a New Yorker, but obviously I was the only one against my family who loved the Bulls. My brothers were all Knicks fans because like those are the names when the Knicks had, you know, Patrick Ewing, Charles Oakley, and Anthony Mason, and you know, it was a different kind of basketball. And I missed that. It's funny, like I was reading something that, like, you know, what players would still be would thrive in this era of basketball that were like in the 90s, and I'm like, I don't know who, because like everyone would be broken in half trying to get into the paint. But yeah, I was a huge Bulls fan, and obviously Michael Jordan fan, and I loved Horace Grant and Bill Cartwright because like these are these guys who were just, you know, they just were the guys, and even though they were quote unquote supporting roles, you know, they made the team. They got the rebounds. They dove into the stands. It was like, yeah, it was like the best. The best of basketball back then. I don't want, obviously I watched The Last Dance like twice.
And it's so different from the way you saw it back then, you know, like it was interesting for me to see it kind of as an adult, because as a kid, it's just like, oh, Scotty didn't, you know, like he didn't come out of the timeout. Who cares? But then to like hear the story behind why he didn't come out for the timeout.
Like almost dying.
It's just, like it's just all the behind the stories.
It's also fascinating to see what the world looks like when there isn't social medias and cell phones.
Seriously.
I mean, it's just like, you just think about that, like, wait a minute, like Dennis Rodman just rolled up to Las Vegas and was just like, yep, I'm gonna be gone for a couple of days with Carmelo Electra, and everyone's like, yeah, like Dennis is gonna be Dennis, he'll come back, we'll be fine. And as opposed to like now, you'd probably see his viral TikTok of being on the top of Pure in Vegas. So it's so different to see, but I think it's important for us to see, because like, you know, those stories, you know, we need to tell those stories and hear those stories and understand context, because I think a lot of times we get one end of the story and not the full one, and so that kind of shapes our opinion. So it's cool to look back and see how it really was.
So true.
And so, you know, obviously last year has been bananas, and obviously you're a working mom. What in the world do you do for self-care?
Okay, so I am very adamant about my time when I work out. So my daughter knows when I work out, I have a little workout, you know, place in my house. When I am in there, that is my time. So whether I'm on the Peloton, whether I am doing yoga or Pilates or just working out with my trainer, whatever that is my time, and I'm selfish with it.
Good.
And I think the biggest thing for me is we write all of these meetings in our calendars. And those are meetings that we have to make, right? They're in our calendar. At 10 o'clock, I have this. At 1 o'clock, I have this, whatever. But we don't carve out that same time for us as individuals. And so as a mom, I really carve out time. I love to read. I love reading. And so, you know, whether it's 20 minutes here or 20 minutes there or 30 minutes, we have a family calendar. So my daughter knows, you know, what my schedule is and things like that. And so we're really trying to do a better job of carving out that time, you know, as her, okay, you need 30 minutes to go do TikToks. Cool. That's your time.
That's your time.
That's your time. And we're going to plan it out. Or, you know, we have family movie night or something like that. So we do carve out time to spend together, but also individually. I think it's so important as, you know, a parent, and to show them that it's important to take care of yourself.
And you're so right. It's, you know, we get so overscheduled, and like I always get disrupted. I like live by my calendar. If it's not my calendar, it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And when when COVID first hit, I had like an hour a day of like Laura time, and like where I would do nothing, or I go read, or, you know, do some meditation, and that worked for the first few months of COVID, and then it just didn't. I tried.
So true.
We're so excited to have Soho Works as the sponsor for the 29 Days of Magic campaign. You know, they're designed by Soho House, and their workspaces to help creative thinkers, businesses small and large, connect, collaborate, and grow. And it's where I'm recording all the episodes of 29 Days of Magic. It's a safe, wonderful, and collaborative experience. I'm currently in the Brooklyn location, but they have locations, one else in New York City, in the Meatpacking District, one in LA, 5 in the UK, and they give you that kind of home away from home feeling with all the tools, technology, equipment to help you do your best work. Like I said, it's an amazing location, feels safe. I've, you know, been able to meet some really awesome people, which you haven't been able to do a lot because of the fact of COVID. So it's been a wonderful experience being able to record here and help build community. So if you want to find out more information about it, please go to sohoworks.com to get more information, and tell them I sent you. And now back to the show.
What are you currently reading?
So I'm currently reading Range. It's a really good book. It's kind of along the lines of just having more experience in different lines of work. So I think it just speaks to like versatility and, you know, bringing in the crafts that you learned when you were younger into your profession. So I think I like reading like a lot of those type of books. I actually got a number, because all my friends know I love books. So they brought me a bunch of them for Christmas. So I think the next book I'm going to read is Cast. It's on the Oprah Book Club. So we're going to read that as a group. Yeah. And so that's the one I think that I'll read next. And then I'm really into like autobiographies. So my daughter reads some for school, and I'll read them along with her.
I just finished the autobiography of Cicely Dyson. Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
Check that out.
I literally bought it, and then I was trying to figure out, like, I have a friend who was friends with her, and I was trying to figure out, like, is she gonna do anything kind of in person? Because if she would, I would love to meet her. And then unfortunately, so I had it on pre-order, and then like it arrived like the day after she passed away, and I was like, damn.
Oh my goodness.
So then I had to devour the book. Like, it is such a beautiful narrative, and she just tells such a glamorous and beautiful story, but in a way that's so humble. It's a fantastic book.
I love autobiographies that are still self-help, you know, like I love when somebody writes for, even though they're writing about themselves, they write for others. And I think that that's been the best autobiographies and biographies that I've written. I actually have added, one of my favorites during quarantine, I read Michael Eric Dyson's Jay-Z, because I'm a huge Jay-Z fan. So I read his Jay-Z book, and it just speaks to, you know, why isn't he considered one of the best poets that our world has ever seen? Because that's exactly what he is, but it goes to the culture. And I just love those type of books. So I'm going to have to add that book to my list.
Yeah. I don't want to give it away, but like, it's like, you know, you're in like you're in your grandmother's like kitchen, and she's just like cooking something on the fire, and you're just sitting there just listening, going, "Oh my gosh."
Yes.
And I think, that's the thing that's really, impactful, especially for Black women, is that like she definitely she always carried herself as this like, wow, like she is the woman. Like you could feel that even on screen. And it's lovely to see how it's sort of translated into the page. So I definitely recommend. You'll read it fast. You're like, oh, I must keep on reading.
Those are always the best ones.
So looking back on all the really amazing things that you've been able to accomplish, what do you think you tell 25-year-old Candace?
Oh my goodness. 25-year-old Candace, I would tell her to be a better listener. I would tell her that it's okay if you don't have the answers. It's okay to experience things, because honestly, the cliche phrase of life is the greatest teacher is really true. We think at every stage of life we have it figured out, and we have no idea, and it's okay. I think that I would tell the 25-year-old Candace that, to continue to make changes and to continue to try to grow and do the things that you feel is right. I think you follow your heart. There's so many times at 25 years old that I didn't want to tell other people no. I didn't want to disappoint them. So in the same sense, because I didn't want to disappoint them, I ended up hurting myself, and I ended up being miserable myself. And that's not a way to live, So I think those are the key messages that I would tell myself. And I think now I'm at a place where at 25, like I said, you think you have it all figured out. And I've hit this like enlightenment at 30, and I know the enlightenment at 40 will probably be even crazier. But right now I'm just really happy. And I think it's just because of, the barriers and the ups and downs that I went through before this. I think I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So I would thank my 25-year-old self, because I think the mistakes I made then have allowed me to kind of grow to who I am and what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. And, listening is just a thing that when we were 25, we're like, what are you talking about? I don't have to do that.
Yeah, you listen, but I don't know. I think you're more hearing. I don't think you're listening at 25.
No, it's in one ear, out there, like, oh, okay, great. And then but it doesn't get absorbed. It just kind of goes in and out. But actively listening, like I remember I was, I think 27 or 28, and I went to a business conference. I met this amazing Black woman who was an executive, and I got to have some time and chat with her. And I was like, what's the one thing that you think I should like take away from this? And she's like, learn how to listen, because you don't know how to listen. And I was like, oh, and it resonated, because I was like, okay, here's this one Black woman who's like running this entire like giant department of like 100 people. Everyone is scared but awed by her. I should probably take a good lesson out of that. Like, if she says that, she's probably onto something. Just maybe. And then last question for you. Do you have a give and or an ask of the audience? So this could be anything from, hey, another book recommendation to everyone should meditate. Like it can be anything you want.
Ooh, that is a good one. I think my ask of the audience, because a lot of the thing that wakes me up every single day is equality. And I understand that within society, we have a challenge. We have a challenge in establishing that and figuring that out. But for me, it is racial, but it's also gender related, as you can relate to. I think a lot of times that we tell our girls and we tell our ladies and we tell our women, we tell our moms, we tell our sisters and our friends and our daughters that they can do and be everything and anything they want to be. but we don't tell our sons that girls, women, mothers, ladies, friends, sisters can do and be anything they want to be. And I think that there's a huge gap. And so I guess my ask is continuing to empower young women and women to be able to do these things, but also encouraging men to move over, scoot over from the table, not asking you to back up, just move over a little bit and make room and understand the beauty in making room for somebody that may be different or look different. And so I don't know if that's an ask. I think it's more of just to realize how important and how crucial it is to have other people at the table that look different, making decisions on a daily basis.
That's fantastic. It's kind of both, which is great. And it's also like super timely because I recently saw some viral tweet, and it was basically like, we tell girls that, they mature faster than boys, and so they have to have like, be understanding of boys. But we never tell our sons, girls mature faster than them. And so you have to be understanding and of girls. And it's like, yeah, like, hey, we're different. This is great. It's actually good if we have diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, and the world isn't just made for men.
It is super crucial. This is why a lot of the times when we do panels for Women's History Month, or we do things like that, I encourage us to have men. Like, a woman's summit is thought of as just women attending, but we need men as well. Like, we need allies. Just like we realized in 2020, the need for our white citizens to step up and say that Black Lives Matter. It's the same. It holds more weight when a man says it's important to hear a woman's voice, or whether we want to admit it or believe in it or not. We can't do this. We can't do this all ourselves. And so I think it is taking that. Also, I would like to make this point, and my brother is one of my biggest supporters, and we talk on a daily basis, and he in no way disrespects or feels, women can't do, he thinks women can do everything a man can do. And I think in language, we found out how important it is, and how language is tied into our system as well. And if you think about just going back in history, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but like calling men boys, but women are called girls all the time.
Forever. You can be a group of women in their 60s and like, hey girls, hello, golden girls.
Hey girls. And these are men in power calling women girls. And I don't think anybody today sees anything wrong with it. But in 20, 30 years, they're going to look back and they're going to see, and I can go on and on about the B word. I listen, like, we don't have all day. So I can go on and on about that. But at the same time, I think that when you change, and my brother, like I said, is one of the most respectful things. He said, I never thought of it that way. I never knew that. Like, I am going to make a conscious effort to not call women girls, because in some way it is demeaning, it is degrading, it is. It may not be looked at in that way, just as before when people would casually use boy or whatever. It wasn't looked at that way. That's just the way things are, but it doesn't have to be the way things will be. And so I think that it's so important to kind of change the way we speak about each other.
The nomenclature absolutely has to change. And I think that's so important. Or it's like, yeah, no, you can't, a bunch of successful women who are sitting around a table and you're like, hey girls, what do you want for dinner? Like, no, it just doesn't work. And you wouldn't do it to a man. It's like the same way that they should ask LeBron where who's watching his kids. They shouldn't ask you who's watching your kids. Like that's how we have to kind of get to this point. Or when it gets asked, for a man to be like, we wouldn't ask this at somebody else, so like we're not asking this of Candace. Like that's, those little, I think are little aspects are actually key to getting, fixing the next generation, because of the way that we speak, and then thinking of it as in person first language, and how you respond to people. So instead of guys, just use folks. Like, there's so many ways that like words can disempower and empower. And the more that we're mindful and conscious of it, which is great that your brother is just conscious of it, because once you're conscious of it, you'll know to catch yourself when you make that mistake. And it's not about cancel culture or any of that foolishness. It's just like acknowledge that this is not the way things should be said now in 2021, and move forward. And and it doesn't have to become like a long drawn out conversation about it. Just change your language.
I think you change your language, but with that, you have to also realize that if we're able to actively speak our bias and not know it, we have other things that we need to go back in the mirror and realize that we're consciously doing, diversity of thought and limiting people based off what you think they can and cannot achieve. I always laugh because I feel like as though in society, especially Black women, we're put into a box. And then the people that decided to put us in the box that they wanted us to be in get mad when we don't fit into that box.
Bingo.
And it just blows my mind. It's almost comical. How many times, and sometimes they think it's a positive way, you speak so well. Well, why wouldn't I? I don't know why I wouldn't speak well. So
you
I
can
think
do all these other things. We just thought you knew how to shoot a basketball. Like, really?
Exactly.
Like, I didn't go to college.
Exactly. So I think some of that has to do with, just seeing it more and being exposed. I think social media will help people travel that wouldn't have ordinarily traveled and be able to see different people in different positions. And I think that's so important.
See more and change. And learn. Just simple stuff. Learn. That's all we ask. But yeah, it's true that I think, and also kind of part of the reason that I did this series, because I didn't go out to try and find like the number one Black woman who's an astronaut or whatever. I just want to find really awesome Black women everywhere, and have them tell their stories. I don't have to put any parameters around that, because you're right. There's this box they think that we all live in. And, by showing that like it's a beautiful mosaic of women across a whole, cadre of industries, we don't fit anywhere because, we are beautiful flowers and like they can bloom in different ways. And so that's kind of the magic of doing this series, to kind of show that no one belongs in a box. Let us just bloom.
I love it.
Awesome. So Candace, you are just so wonderful. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll put all the details in the show notes for folks to connect with you, follow you on Instagram and all that good stuff, and your book recommendations as well. But thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Thank you so much for having me, and please stay in touch. You have my email, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And that is our show.